Many moms believe that part of early motherhood is just accepting that you're never going to sleep again. You might think that waking up multiple times at night to feed your baby is just part of your new job description. Or they've been told that it's normal for your breastfeeding baby to continue feeding multiple times at night past the newborn days, and there's nothing you can do about it, so you just have to accept it. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not. Nighttime weaning and uninterrupted sleep can happen naturally when you optimize daytime feeds. Most parents and healthcare professionals don't realize that 95% of the sleep puzzle is feeding. Your baby needs to be able to take a quality, efficient feed, whether they're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, to be able to drop nighttime feeds. There is a very uncomplicated strategy to this. In this class, I'm going to teach you how to set your baby up to take an efficient, effective feed so you can both get more sleep. Hey, I'm Hillary, and as a seasoned mother baby nurse, lactation consultant, and mama for, I've seen it all, from the overwhelming flood of conflicting advice to those quiet moments of doubt at 2 a.m. I understand it because I've lived it, and I've learned that getting feeding right is a game changer for better sleep. I created babysettler to bridge the gap that so many healthcare providers and baby sleep experts leave, offering you practical, evidence-based, intuitive strategies that you can trust. Fortunately and unfortunately, everyone wants to help moms and babies, whether it is a brand or whether it is a company trying to sell you a product or whether it's an influencer or any kind of social media or Google, your pediatrician, your friends and families, no matter if their intentions are good or if they're for profit. Everybody wants to be an expert in this space, but the reality is that really having that expert knowledge specifically to the newborn phase requires a lot of knowledge about feeding and that connection between feeding and sleep. Even if you have been through it, you've got to really know that deep foundation between feeding and sleep. So with babysettler, I personally have been a nurse for almost 10 years. I am a lactation consultant. I've spent over 10,000 hours working directly with moms and babies with these specific problems. With breastfeeding, there are a lot of people and groups and lactation consultants that specifically promote that message that breast is best or everyone should breastfeed. And the reality is that there's a lot that goes into that. And then in today's society, we're trying to do so many things, and you just have to make sure that you check in with your goals and what your specific goals are, and that you have the tools to be able to make the best decision for you. There's a lot of noise out there. And I know for me, when I was a mom for the first time, I just felt like I was lost in all of the maze of conflicting expert advice. Everyone seemed like they were an expert. And so I had to figure out, okay, who is actually an expert? Everyone was just saying, do this, don't do that. And I specifically am very type A. And so I thought I was prepared as possible. I had read every book, blog, taken the classes. Honestly, I thought, oh, this is going to be a breeze. I'm prepared. It's going to be easy. And then when my 6-week-old son's sleep issues started to overwhelm me, I was looking for a quick fix, and I was blindly following sleep training experts' advice. And it was actually causing me more stress and anxiety than if I had just trusted my intuition and had the knowledge to even know that I needed to learn really the foundation to really navigate this season. And so my aha moment happened when my husband asked me a simple question about our baby's hunger. And he really made me realize that I had lost touch with my intuition. And that moment led me on this journey to actually become an expert. And really, that's what led me to found babysettler. And my oldest child is now 12 years old. So I could say that I started this journey about 12 years ago. In this class, I am going to teach you the connection between feeding and sleep so that you can naturally get your baby to naturally sleep through the night, or at least set them up to be able to do that. So there's 3 ways that we do that, 3 steps that we take. The first step is learning how to get your baby to have efficient, effective feeds, and that will in turn lead to more sleep. you've got to really understand how to manage your baby's wake windows in order to prevent an overtired, overstimulated baby, because babies that are overtired and overstimulated do not feed well, and then they do not sleep well. And then we're going to teach you how to implement effective strategies to really get your baby to naturally extend their nighttime sleep and hopefully sleep through the night. A couple things about this specific class is that everything that I'm going to tell you is backed by current evidence-based research. If it's not and it's subjective, I will definitely disclose that to you. Each section will be an overview of what you need to do to be successful in that specific area. And really, it's going to tell you best practices to implement. And then we are going to start with the foundation to better sleep, which is feeding. I just mentioned that feeding and sleep are connected. And then we're going to transition to the wake windows and what the wake period should be like. And then we will end with sleep. Okay, so if I had to pick a name for this class, it would be Well-Fed Babies Sleep Better. And fed does not mean breastfed. It does not mean bottle fed. It does not mean formula fed or large volumes. It is specific to the quality of the feeding. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what quality means as we go on. So our first objective is how to get efficient, effective feeds to get more sleep. I think some points that you need to know is that you can have a baby that breastfeeds and sleep through the night. If that is your goal, a lot of times I will work with moms and they are under this misconception that they have to choose breastfeeding or sleep. And that is just not the case. You do need to be able to manage your lactation and understand how your body makes milk and supply and demand, and really have a good grasp on that to be able to get your baby to breastfeed and exclusively breastfeed and set them up for nighttime sleep. But it absolutely is not either or. You can have both. Another thing a lot of parents and moms will think is that if they give their baby a larger volume bottle, whether it's for the last feed of the day or whether it's just throughout the day, if we give them a lot of volume, they're going to naturally sleep through the night. That is just not true. Overfeeding and poor quality feeds can actually lead to reflux and a really uncomfortable baby. Babies that are experiencing reflux or gas or they're uncomfortable, they are not going to sleep well. So let's start with some foundational truths. Feeding on cue, whether you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, is going to promote efficient, effective feeds. So I want to talk about that for a minute, because when you are in the hospital or wherever you deliver, your baby will be born, and whatever feeding method you choose, people are going to say to you, your nurses, whoever is working with you is going to say, you need to feed your baby every 3 hours. They need to get at least 8 feeds in 24 hours. And there's some truth to that statement. We do want your baby in the first 2 weeks of life to get at least 8 feeds per 24 hours, because we know based on the size of their stomach that they have to feed at least 8 times to take in the volume that they need to be able to gain weight. So that part of the statement is true. Feeding every 3 hours and feeding on a schedule, your baby is not a robot. They are not going to feed on a schedule from the beginning. You can incorporate a routine. And at Babysettler, we really encourage that after you've established lactation or feeding in those first 2 weeks. But a routine is different than a schedule. So a schedule would be, it's 9 a.m. and my baby is not due to eat until 12. They ate at 9. They went to sleep after the feeding, and now your baby woke up at 11:30. They're awake, they're queuing, they're ready to feed, but they're not scheduled to feed until 12. And so you're using a pacifier or some other kind of technique to hold them off to 12 o'clock because that is their scheduled time to feed. So then what happens is, if you're using a pacifier or really anything, they're sucking on the pacifier, they're awake, right? Maybe they're teetering between awake and asleep, but they're awake. And their wake window in the newborn period is really only 30 to 45 minutes max. So if they've spent the first 15, 20, 30 minutes of their wake window being held off for the next feed, then when you start the feed at 12, they are going to start the feed, and sucking, whether it's breast or bottle, is soothing, right? So they're going to start sucking and they're going to fall asleep in the feed. Early into the feed, they're going to fall asleep and they're not going to take a full volume feed. Now, full volume is not large volume. It just means based on their weight and age and what their fullness level feels like. We don't want them to have a snack. So really, we want to set them up to take a full feed to them. So that can be a little bit hard to understand, but I like to pause here and clarify it. Full feed versus large feed. Whenever you're feeding your baby, your goal is that you offer them a feed and then you hopefully get them to tell you that they're still hungry if they're still hungry. So specifically for a newborn, if I'm doing a feed, when they fall asleep or they start to act like they're done feeding, I'm going to take them off, burp them, move them side to side, wake them up, and try to get them to tell me that they're still hungry. But that can really be thrown off if we're holding them off to a feed or to a set time, because if they've already been awake for that 30 minutes or so, they're potentially falling asleep at the start of the feed. And then what happens there is they take a snack feed, they fall asleep, and then 20 minutes later, they're waking back up and they're actually hungry because they just had a snack. And then that's just a cycle that's really hard to get in. So feeding at the start of the wake window helps you to get full feeds. The next thing is you only want to wake a sleeping baby if they are going past 3.5 to 4 hours between feeds, or if they aren't going to get in those 8 feeds in 24 hours that we just talked about. Again, we're talking about newborns, really the first 4 weeks, maybe up to 6 weeks is our age group that we're looking at here. We talked about the 8 rule just a second ago, but the reason the 3.5 to 4 hours is important is because if you fed every 4 hours, I'm trying to do quick math here. If you fed every 4 hours, I think that would only be 6 times in 24 hours, right? So really what happens with most babies is they're going to cluster a few feeds and then they're going to go a little bit longer between feeds. So here's another good example. If your baby fed at 9 o'clock and it's 12 o'clock and they are in a deep sleep, you look over there and they are just in a deep sleep. They are not ready to wake up, but you're like, it's 12 o'clock. It is their scheduled time to wake up. So you try to wake them up, you change the diaper, maybe you put them skin to skin, and they just won't wake up to eat. So now it's 3.5, 4 hours, and you've just spent that time trying to wake them up for a feed when, especially if it's nighttime, you could have been sleeping. So following that cue, or maybe you get them to wake up a little bit, but it's a sleepy feed and they don't feed, it's another snack feed. They don't take a full feed because they were sleepy. They weren't really hungry. In most cases, babies will cluster 2 feeds. So maybe that baby would feed at 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock and then go a 4-hour stretch and they're feeding at that 4-hour stretch. And then if they've gone a 4-hour stretch, then maybe they feed at a 2-hour interval on the backside of that. So following the feed, wake, sleep, feed cycle is a really effective strategy to establish a routine, not a set time, but really looking at that routine to get really good feeds. But there is some parental guidance needed. If you have a baby that is just an excellent sleeper and is wanting to sleep longer, you may have to wake them up at times. Babies that are jaundice, which is elevated bilirubin, that tends to make them super sleepy feeders. Babies that are below their birth weight typically go into hibernate mode. So they may sleep. I don't know if you've heard a parent or somebody say to you, just let the baby sleep. They'll let you know when they're hungry. There is some truth to that, but for a baby that is jaundiced or a baby that's below birth weight or a baby that was born early, we can't always trust those babies. So their parental guidance is definitely needed.